I'll admit, coverage of this game has been a little deader than even I would have liked, and I apologise to everybody for that one, but today I thought it wouldn't harm to go over the PC specification requirements that came out on the 7th of September so that we know what it'll take to run the game on PC. Now, I do acknowledge that I'm a little late to this one. I have no idea why I didn't make a video on the 7th. I think it was because I was too caught up with Spider-Man, which came out on PS4, and that game is fucking sick. I highly recommend, but I've made other videos going over that. In today's video, we're going over the PC specs anyway, so why don't we just dive straight into this. Okay, let's start off with the minimum requirements. Now, as an operating system, it recommends for minimum a Windows 7 SP1, Windows 8.1 or Windows 10, 64-bit only, and Jesus Christ, some guy on a really loud motorbike just went past my house, I apologise. For a processor, it recommends AMD FX 6300 at 3.8 GHz, Ryzen 3 to 1200, or an Intel Core i5 2400 at 3.1 GHz as a bare minimum. Now, of course, if you get something better than that, then it's obviously going to improve the performance. But from personal experience, I find that the processor isn't the most important thing on here, so that's just there as a recommendation. For the graphics card, which is one of the more important specifications when it comes to gaming on PC, that you need to worry about at least, because consoles have them too, it recommends as a bare minimum an AMD Radeon R9 285 or NVIDIA GeForce GTX 660 at 2GB of video memory with shader model 5.0. Now, obviously, I would highly recommend not going for the bare minimum of these here, because that will really not be a good experience. These kinds of graphics cards are the bare minimum to not get unplayable frame rates, I'd say, so definitely go for something higher if you can. Believe me, I've played on bare minimum specs before and it's a horrible experience. Bare minimum for memory is 8GB of RAM, and that's fair enough. As for storage, you'll need 46GB available hard drive space, which is just across the board recommended, and that's nothing to do with high or low specs. If your PC doesn't meet the bottom two requirements, then your computer is clearly from the Stone Age and you shouldn't be gaming on it anyway. Now, those are the bare minimum requirements. Now, if you settle for that, you're not going to have a good experience, alright? That's just the minimum that will get the game running, even if the frame rate is shit. So definitely try to go for the recommended if you can. We're going to get onto that now. Obviously, on recommended specifications, the operating system, DirectX, and sound are the same. Storage is also the same, that's across the board. Now, the recommended processor is an AMD FX 8350 at 4GHz, Ryzen 5 1400, Intel Core i7 3770 at 3.5GHz or higher. As for a recommended graphics card, AMD Radeon R9 290 or NVIDIA GeForce GTX 970 with 4GB of video memory or more with shader model 5.0 or better. Personally, I'd still shoot for better if you can. Recommended memory is again 8GB of RAM, though personally, for a more smooth experience, I would recommend 16. It won't make so much of a difference while you're playing the game, but when you close the game, I find that your computer will recover a lot faster if it's got more RAM. Though 2 sticks of 8GB can set you back about 100 quid, so I understand an 8GB should do the trick in theory, especially if you're just playing the game, that should be fine. Obviously, these recommended specifications should get you 30 frames per second at 1080p on high settings. Obviously, these aren't the highest settings you can shoot for, those would be above recommended, because recommended is by no means going to get you the best performance going. It's just going to get you a smooth, reliable performance at 30 frames per second at 1080p. So don't complain if you're trying to run the game at 4K 60 frames per second on ultra settings and it's kind of lagging your computer to shit, because there's no promise that it will be able to do that. In fact, it definitely won't. So if you want better performance, shoot for higher again. In fact, they do have a recommended 4K configuration on this site, so we're going to go over that now. So the recommended 4K configuration starts off with the operating system being a non-negotiable Windows 10 64-bit version only. As for the processor, it recommends an AMD Ryzen 1700X at 3.8 GHz or an Intel Core i7 7700 at 4.2 GHz, so anything on this level or higher will do the job. As for the graphics card, it recommends an AMD Vega 64 or an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1080 with 8GB of video memory with shader model 5.0. Obviously, you can shoot for higher if you want to overkill it. As for memory, it's recommending 16GB of RAM, which makes perfect sense here. Honestly, I would recommend that for a smoother experience all round anyway. Storage, DirectX, and sound are all the same as it was before, so it doesn't really make sense to go over that for a third time. And these specs should in theory get you a resolution of 4K at 30 FPS at the video preset of high. Now, if you turn that 4K down to 1080p, there's no promise that it will run ultra settings at 60 frames per second. That's not what it's saying here. But in theory, at 1080p, it should be able to tank ultra. I wouldn't rely on getting a consistent 60 frames per second at these settings though, because let's face it, it's an open world game. Nobody ever shoots for 60 frames on them. If you get it, then it's a bonus. If not, who cares? I'll leave a link to the site in the description if you want to go over this article on your own and figure out what you're going to do from there. I'm by no means a technological expert. When I'm chipping in with my own personal recommendations and things, it's just me talking from experience. Now, at the bottom of the article, it does give us a list of graphics cards the game will support on launch. So if you want to check the graphics card is supported, then take a look here and you'll see. Of course, you can either pause the video or you can click the link in the description and take a look at it on the article. I would read it out, but that'll just be like me reading out a load of gibberish. But chances are, if you've got a more recent modern graphics card, then it's going to be supported. If you have no idea what's been going on for the past 5 minutes and you just watched this video to hear my sexy voice, then you're welcome. If not, and you still don't know what I've been saying, then I'm so sorry. But now PC players know what requirements to go for. But anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share, and all that wonderful shit. I apologise for being a couple days late to this one. I was kind of wrapped up in being Spider-Man. Be sure to go ahead and drop me a follow on Twitter, and I will see you all very soon with another video at some point.